The one you didn't recognize? Why soulmates often appear too early? What if the one was already in your life, but you just weren't ready to see them? We imagine that the moment we meet the one, it will be clear, poetic, destined, that the skies will part, that something will just click, that we'll know instantly. But what if the truth is quieter than that? What if love's greatest test isn't in the meeting, but in the becoming? Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And this is where we begin. Because the truth is, you may have already met them. You may have crossed paths at the exact moment you were still fighting your own reflection. And when love showed up, you couldn't recognize it, because it looked too much like your wounds. You see, soulmates don't always come in with grand gestures. They come with intensity, familiarity, a strange kind of ache, like déjà vu wrapped in a human body. They mirror something back to you, not just beauty or potential, but pain, the parts of you you've yet to heal, the truths you've yet to own. You didn't push them away because they were wrong, but because you weren't ready. In Jungian psychology, this is called projection. It's when we unconsciously cast our inner world onto others, our fears, our unmet needs, our longing for wholeness. So, when someone enters your life and stirs something deep, something that makes you feel both exhilarated and exposed, it might be them, but your ego might not know what to do with that. Maybe they were too intense. Maybe the connection scared you. Maybe they felt too close too soon. Or maybe they reminded you of the part of yourself that still doubted love was safe. And so, you walked away. Or they did, because sometimes soulmates aren't just about love. They're about awakening. They come in like wild mirrors. And if you're not anchored in your own self-worth, you'll interpret their reflection as danger. Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. So, that soulmate you met, the one who triggered you, confused you, or disappeared too soon, they might not have failed the test. You both may have simply arrived too early. Here's the thing no one tells you. The universe doesn't always introduce the one when you're ready to love them. Sometimes, it introduces them when you're ready to heal. Because before you can love someone deeply, you have to be willing to see yourself clearly. And when the one comes along, they'll do that, not with words, but with energy, with presence, with an emotional mirror so sharp, you either run from it, or you evolve. That's the hard truth about soulmate connections. They don't just make your heart skip, they stretch you, challenge you, ask you to rise. And many people aren't ready to rise yet. So they label the experience as too much. They call it bad timing. They say, it just didn't work out. But underneath the narrative is often a fear. I met someone who saw me, and I didn't yet know how to be seen. What if the one wasn't supposed to stay back then? What if they came to spark a fire in you that needed time to grow, to crack open your illusion of love, to teach you the difference between infatuation and reflection, to show you your own wounds in high definition, so you could finally begin to heal? That's what Jung meant when he said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Soulmates aren't always meant to stay in their first form. Sometimes they return later, when you're no longer projecting, when they're no longer avoiding, when you've both done the sacred private work that transforms pain into wisdom. And other times, they don't return at all, but the impact remains, because their presence planted something in you, a question, a longing, a deeper awareness of what your soul is really seeking. So maybe you already met the one. Maybe it didn't work out, not because they weren't it, but because the version of you that met them was still living in survival, still unsure, still afraid. And you can't build love on a foundation of fear. But here's the grace in it. If they're meant for you, life will find a way. When you're no longer chasing validation, when you're no longer trying to complete yourself through someone else, when love is no longer an escape, but a mirror of wholeness, the one you met too early may be the one who meets you again when it's right. Synchronicity, the universe's way of repeating the message. It keeps showing up, but why? You keep hearing their name. They show up in your dreams. You meet someone else, but it's their face you think of. And every time you try to forget them, the universe reminds you that's not your imagination. That's synchronicity. Carl Jung described synchronicity as a meaningful coincidence of two or more events where something other than the probability of chance is involved. In other words, it's the universe's way of saying, pay attention. This matters. Here's the thing about meeting the one. It doesn't always begin with recognition. Sometimes it begins with a whisper, a strange pull, a memory that refuses to fade even when time moves on. You keep crossing paths. They pop into your mind at the most random moments. You see someone who looks like them. You hear a song that played the day you met. Your soul remembers. And even if the relationship never happened, the imprint remains. That's not obsession. That's the unconscious trying to surface. That's the deeper self pulling on threads your logical mind hasn't caught up to yet. Jung believed that the psyche is not bound by linear time. He taught that the unconscious holds everything, and when two souls are deeply connected, it's not bound to one moment or one place. That's why coincidences repeat. That's why the same themes, names, and emotions resurface in waves. Because love that touches the soul doesn't just end. It transforms. It waits. It echoes until you're able to receive it. So, what are the signs that synchronicity is speaking? Let's break it down. 1. Repeated symbols or numbers. You see the same time on the clock, 11:11 to 22:333. You notice specific dates lining up. You keep encountering the same word, name, or image. This is not random. It's resonance. It's the psyche aligning with external events, creating meaning through repetition. The soul speaks in symbols. 2. Strange timing or near misses. You almost texted them, and then they called. You thought about them, and ran into a mutual friend. You were just speaking of them, and their photo appears on your feed. This isn't proof that you should chase. It's proof that something in the unconscious is not finished speaking. 3. Emotional waves without triggers. You're fine, and suddenly a wave of grief or longing hits. You weren't thinking of them, and then your heart twists. Jung would say this is the shadow culling, the part of us that holds what we've repressed or lost. Your soul is still in dialogue, and it's inviting you to listen. 4. Dreams that feel more like messages than memories. They show up in your dreams, not just once, but again and again. And in these dreams, it's not always romantic. Sometimes it's symbolic. Sometimes it's silent. But the presence feels real. That's the unconscious breaking through the walls of logic. That's the bond resurfacing, where your mind cannot interfere. Here's what's important to understand. Synchronicity is not about obsession. It's not a green light to go back to someone who hurt you. It's not an invitation to chase. It's a call inward. It's the universe inviting you to sit with the lesson, the energy, the transformation. This person awakened in you, because even if you're never meant to reunite with them in the outer world, the internal awakening was always the point. Synchronicity is not just about reunion. It's about revelation. Jung said, we meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life. So maybe the person you can't stop thinking about isn't just about love. Maybe they're a mirror that pulled you back into yourself, into your longings, into your purpose. Maybe they showed up not to complete you, but to remind you what you're meant to awaken into. And maybe the reason they keep appearing isn't because they're coming back into your life, but because your life is circling back to a version of you that's finally ready to understand. So the next time you see a sign, don't just ask what it means about them. Ask what it means about you. Are you ready now for the kind of love you once ran from? Are you finally living at the frequency you once couldn't hold? Are you becoming the person your soulmate was always meant to meet? Because maybe they were always the one, but maybe you were not yet the one for yourself. When the soul is ready, The signs stop being confusing and start making sense. The inner work that reveals the one. You don't attract the one. You awaken into alignment with them. It's easy to think love is something that happens to us, that we meet the right person, and everything finally makes sense. But the truth is more humbling, more powerful, and more difficult. You don't meet your soulmate when you want love. You meet them when you're ready for love. And most of us aren't ready. Not at first. Not when we're still operating from wounds, not wisdom. From loneliness, not wholeness. From fear, not freedom. We think we're ready for real love. But real love doesn't just feel good. It exposes you. It shows you where you're not free. It shows you where you still beg for approval. Where you're still hiding, still performing, still waiting for someone else to prove that you're worthy of being chosen. This is where the inner work begins. Not with them, but with you. You don't wait for love. You prepare for it. Carl Jung's path of individuation. In Jungian psychology, the goal isn't happiness, it's wholeness. Individuation is the process of becoming your true self, not the persona you show the world, not the identity you created to survive, but the soul underneath all that. And here's what's radical. Your soulmate can't truly meet you until you've met yourself, because they're not looking for your perfection. They're responding to your integration, to the way you own your flaws, the way you've made peace with your past, the way you no longer need to chase love, to feel complete. When you do the inner work, you don't need them to save you. You don't see them as your other half. You see them as your mirror, your reflection, your echo. And when that happens, the energy shifts. How the inner work changes what you attract. Let's look at the transformation that unfolds when you heal. 1. You stop chasing emotionally unavailable people. You begin to see inconsistency not as mystery, but as immaturity. You no longer romanticize chaos, because your nervous system finally knows peace. 2. You stop confusing chemistry with trauma. The butterflies that once made you feel alive, you realize they were often anxiety in disguise. You stop chasing intensity and start recognizing alignment. Jung taught that what we don't integrate will keep showing up as fate. That means your repeated heartbreaks aren't bad luck. They're unhealed patterns trying to get your attention. 3. You develop spiritual patience. You stop asking, when will I meet them? And start asking, who am I becoming while I wait? And in that stillness, you become magnetic, not because you're trying, but because you're whole. Healing is how you meet your soulmate. The soulmate mirrors the inner you. When you begin the process of integration, when your shadow is no longer feared but embraced, you create space for a different kind of love. One that sees you, one that steadies you, one that doesn't rescue your pain, but respects it. This is how the one reveals themselves. Not always by arriving, but by reappearing. When you've evolved, that person you once couldn't hold space for, they might show up again. Or someone new, who carries the same soul recognition, but meets you in this new chapter. Either way, it isn't coincidence. It's confirmation that your soul no longer needs the lesson. It's ready for the connection. You see, most people look for the one before they've become the one, before they've learned to self-soothe, before they've held themselves through their own storms, before they've forgiven their younger selves for settling, chasing, or tolerating less than they deserve. Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." And that awakening is what prepares the heart for reunion, because love that is rooted in truth doesn't ask you to abandon yourself. It asks you to return to yourself again and again until your soul is no longer searching. The one doesn't arrive to fix you. They arrive because you've already done the work. And by then, you'll no longer beg for love. You'll no longer wonder if you're enough. You'll no longer fall for the illusion of potential. You'll see clearly, and you'll be able to receive love without guilt, confusion, or fear. If this message is speaking to the quiet parts of you, if you've felt the pull of someone from your past, or the slow rising of someone from your future, know that it's not a coincidence. You're remembering, you're realigning, you're being prepared. So, if this resonated with your heart, Hit the like button to affirm your healing. Subscribe for more Jungian insights. And comment below. I am becoming who I was always meant to be. Let this be your mirror, until the one you've been waiting for sees their reflection in you. The one doesn't arrive to fix you. They arrive because you've already done the work. And by then, you'll no longer beg for love. You'll no longer wonder if you're enough. You'll no longer fall for the illusion of potential. You'll see clearly, and you'll be able to receive clearly, because when you're no longer fragmented, you stop attracting fragments. When you're no longer afraid of being alone, you stop tolerating the kind of love that makes you feel lonelier than solitude ever could. The moment you meet the one again, it may not be the first version of them, and it may not even be the same person. But one day, they'll come, and this time, it will feel different, not because it's some grand romantic movie scene, but because your nervous system will feel calm. Your intuition will whisper, not scream. There will be no chasing, no proving, no trying to fit into who you think you need to be. There will only be being and recognition. Recognition of the you who's finally come home to herself or himself, and recognition of them as not the one who fills your empty spaces, but the one who matches your fullness. That's how the one reveals themselves, not in fireworks, but in resonance, not in urgency, but in presence, not as your missing piece, but as the soul who met you where you are whole. So, if you've met someone before, and they stirred something so deep, it terrified you, if they awakened something your body wasn't yet ready to hold, if they left, or you ran, don't shame yourself. That connection wasn't a failure. It was an invitation, an echo of what's possible. When you choose to do the work within, maybe the love you're waiting for is already waiting for you too. And if they don't return, that's okay, because sometimes the one you met early was never meant to stay. They were meant to awaken, to disrupt, to push you out of your illusions, to remind you that love isn't about possession, but transformation. And whether or not you cross paths again, you'll know the next time, because your body won't shake from anxiety. Your heart won't ache from uncertainty. You won't feel like you're being tested. You'll feel like you've come home. When you've done the work, you stop asking, is this love? You just know. And when that day comes, whether it's them or someone your soul has yet to meet in physical form, you won't be waiting anymore. You'll be ready. You're not waiting, you're being prepared. You're not waiting for them. You're becoming who you were always meant to be. We live in a world that tells us we must always do. Swipe, search, strategize, manifest them, chase them, call them in. But when it comes to real love, the kind that changes you, you don't force it, you prepare for it. And in that stillness, you're not just waiting, you're growing into the version of yourself who knows how to recognize it when it arrives. Because here's the truth. If love walked in today, would you truly be ready to receive it? Would your nervous system feel safe in its presence? Would you believe you deserve to be seen, supported, and adored without shrinking or second-guessing? Or would you sabotage it, the way many of us have done, before the soul had the strength to hold what the heart had longed for? The soulmate is found through self-mastery. Jung taught us that wholeness is not about perfection. It's about integration. It's about honoring every part of you, the broken, the beautiful, the buried, and becoming the container that can hold real love without fear of losing yourself. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung? So no, you're not waiting. You're being transformed. Here's what that preparation looks like. 1. Emotional maturity. You stop needing someone to fix you. You'll learn how to feel your feelings without making them someone else's responsibility. You understand the difference between love and dependency. 2. Nervous system regulation. You no longer mistake anxiety for passion. You no longer feel on edge around someone and call it chemistry. You learn to feel safe first within yourself and then with another. This is powerful because when the one arrives, you'll recognize them not by intensity, but by peace. 3. Boundaries that honor your wholeness. You no longer betray yourself just to keep someone close. You walk away from what drains you, not because you're hard, but because you're healed. You don't just know your worth. You honor it in how you let people show up. When you're ready, the signs change. When you're ready, the universe stops sending tests. It stops repeating painful patterns. You no longer see red flags as puzzles to solve. You no longer romanticize emotional chaos. Instead, you notice synchronicity, not as torment, but as alignment. You see the world reflect your inner peace. You attract souls who speak your language, not in words, but in energy. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, Jung. And when you've become that version of you, you'll see the one differently, not as your savior, not as the source of your happiness, but as someone who simply fits, a soul who meets you, because you finally met yourself. So, if you're alone right now, please know you're not behind. You're not being punished. You're not forgotten. You're being fortified. You don't find the one. You become the one, and they recognize you there. What if they were always the one, but you weren't ready? Yes, maybe you've already met them. Maybe you lost them. Maybe they left before you could say what you meant. Maybe you saw it, but they didn't. Or maybe they did, but you both weren't ready to hold it. That hurts, but don't stay stuck in what could have been. Because if it's meant truly, soulfully meant, love has a strange way of returning when both hearts have done the work, not to finish what was, but to begin again, this time without fear. And if not them, then someone who carries the same signature, someone who vibrates at the frequency of the healing you've done, someone who doesn't make you question your worth, because they've met themselves too. If this message has reminded you of someone, if a part of you feels both broken and awakened at the same time, then it's because your soul is speaking. Like this video to affirm your readiness for real love. Comment below, I'm not waiting, I'm becoming. Subscribe for more content on soulmates, self-actualization, and the inner journey guided by Carl Jung's wisdom. And if you're still unsure whether you've met the one, ask yourself this: did they change you, or did they awaken you to the change you already needed? Because maybe love isn't about finding the perfect person. Maybe it's about remembering who you were before the world told you you were not enough. And maybe, just maybe, they'll find you when you're no longer looking, but finally seeing.